Hey everyone, welcome to the Camino Cafe. I'm glad that you are listening on our podcast or hopefully are joining us on our YouTube channel. And today you can see Carol Alexander Price sitting in her lovely home in Spain. So Carol, if you just want to say where you are in the world, that would be awesome.
Hi everybody. I live about 25-minute drive above from Easter on the Camino Frances in a really small village, a hamlet of about 7 people, I think, at the moment. So in Palencia.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, I can't wait to hear it. Your home looks absolutely lovely. And I think viewers and listeners are going to be really excited to hear some of your stories. And we've been chatting it up for a few minutes before we started the recording, and I can tell everyone this is going to be a fun call. And let's just start, Carol. So you run a language school online, which you had to pivot because of COVID. So that's really interesting. And then now, as we're coming out of the pandemic, you have started some new endeavors, and that includes Camino Confidence, which is a new business that you started. So I'm really anxious to hear more about that. But I thought we'll start with, because you're a pilgrim, and we are always talking to pilgrims here at the Camino Cafe, I thought we would start with, that age-old question: how did you first learn about the Camino?
Mine isn't. It's very different to a lot of other people. I don't think I actually got like a calling of any such thing. Basically, I went to university quite late in life. I went to do a law degree in Newcastle upon Tyne University.
Okay.
I was how old was I then? About 38 years old. And when I joined, I was obviously what you call a mature student. And there was about 6 or 7 of us, and I met this lovely girl called Liba, and she was from Fiji. And we started to share a flat together, and we got on really well. And one day she said to me, Carol, do you want to do the Camino de Santiago this summer? And I said, okay, so what's the Camino de Santiago? I'd never heard of it. Yeah. And she went, well, it's like this walk. I said, well, what kind of walk? It's like across Spain. I said, well, what do you mean across Spain? Well, it starts in France, it goes across Spain to a place called Santiago. I said, well, that sounds great. I said, so how far is it? She went, 800 kilometers. I don't think it really registered with me how long it was, because kilometers was not something I was accustomed to using. I just went, yeah, let's do that. And that was it. And that was my introduction to walking the Camino in 2003.
Okay, so you were 38 then on your first Camino?
Yeah.
Well, that was so brave to just take that on. What, you had no idea. I mean, you were pretty athletic. I think we've talked in the past that you had a fitness background, but had you ever really hiked or done things similar?
No, absolutely not.
Wow.
I was a fitness instructor for many years, so I'd always been quite fit, and I always went to the gym, so I worked out quite a lot. I had never walked, with a rucksack on my back. And I just was a little bit foolhardy about it all. I just thought, oh yeah, no problem, I can do this. And yeah, I didn't do an ounce of training, which I really regretted by the time I got to Roncesvalles. I collapsed when I got to Roncesvalles, but that's another story. So yeah, I had no idea. So I basically arrived in Spain, in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, having not booked anything. Didn't even book a place in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. We just literally arrived and looked for accommodation. And I had this monstrous rucksack. Well, actually, look, I had to show you. Look at this fantastic rucksack. This is my very first rucksack.
Oh my goodness.
It's years old. I can't throw it away. I love it so much. But I knew it was bursting to the seams with stuff. I don't know what I was thinking.
How much weight do you think you carried in the first?
Oh, I know. I carried about 10 kilos over the Pyrenees. Yeah. I did.
So you guys are habit.
Sorry?
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I did the usual walk of shame to the post office in Pamplona and sent 3 kilos of stuff back home. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, what did you send home? Like, so we can let viewers know if they're getting ready to put stuff in their backpack, what do you think was included in that that shipment back home?
I think I'm just too ashamed to say, really, to be honest with you. Makeup, I mean, God, I bought a bag of makeup with me. Why? I bought makeup with me. I bought a big thick towel with me. I bought lots of little changes of clothes. I had a lovely little denim skirt and a couple of nice tops. Well, that went straight in a packet and straight off home. And I just lived with 2 outfits for the whole Camino.
Good. What was the one luxury item you still kept?
Right, foundation. Because, you know, I mean, I know it sounds a bit vain. I don't wear a lot of makeup, actually, to be honest. I never have done, but I don't know. I just like to do something to make myself a little bit human. And as you know, when you're walking the Camino, you know, your hair ends up dry and all over, and just that tiny, weeny bit of foundation just makes you feel a bit human again.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that, right? I also find too that sometimes the foundation I use has sunscreen in it.
Yeah.
Right? And so sunscreen is really important on some of those days. I know we talk a lot about rain on, you know, especially in Galicia, but you know, there is quite a bit of sun some days. So yeah, so I think there's nothing to be ashamed about having a luxury item. We all have them, but it's interesting to hear what you sent back. And I think, like you said, that's kind of a walk of shame. I think everybody ends up realizing take stuff we don't really need. So you say you got to Roncesvalles and you collapsed. You know, what went through your mind? You know, because you hadn't trained and you thought like, oh, it's gonna be no big deal. And then after that first day, like what then went through your mind, and how did you prepare then? You know, how did you get yourself out of bed to go that next day?
Well, as you know, when I did mine in my first Camino, Orison didn't exist. You know, there were no albergs between. Once you got on the road from Saint Jean Pied de Port, you never stopped until you got to Roncesvalles. So it was long. Oh my God, it was so hard. It was one of the most amazing days of my life, and still is, but one of the hardest things I've ever done. And to be honest with you, I think by the time I reached Roncesvalles, I was literally exhausted on my knees. And I didn't go into the alberg because I knew I was going to stay for a couple of nights. So I went down and I stayed in the hotel down the road for a couple of days. And you know what? I was so proud of myself. And I thought, I'm not giving this up. I can't believe I've done that. I cannot believe I've got over those Pyrenees and I've done this. And I'm so proud of myself. No way am I going home. And I think it was that. And you know what? I went through the whole Camino saying, I walked over the Pyrenees. Do you know? I walked over the Pyrenees. I did. I didn't tell everybody that, obviously, because that would sound really boastful. But I was saying it to myself quite a lot. Listen, I went over the Pyrenees. I can do anything now. Yeah.
What a great tagline. Do you find yourself saying that yourself now? I know you've had a lot of accomplishments in your life, but do you find yourself feeling that way even now, that when you're getting down, that you can say, you know, look at the things I've done on the Camino?
I would say, I mean, I have accomplished a lot in my time. But that's another story. That's all about how I changed the way I thought about things when I finished the Camino. But this one of the most amazing experiences of my life, and I still think even now, all these years, like how many, 17, 18 years later, and I've achieved a lot over those years, I still look at that as one of my biggest achievements and my most amazing experiences ever. I can't even begin to explain how it feels to achieve something that you didn't realize you could do. It's just incredible.
That's so interesting how even today you're still finding that to be such a transformational moment for you. And, you know, you and I were chatting a little bit before we started that sometimes when we walk the Camino, we don't even realize what the impact of that Camino is going to be many years later. So I wonder if we can kind of talk about that, because here you are, you're walking this 2003, you're in law school, you've met this friend, right, that you walk with. Do I have that correct?
Yeah.
And in 2003, I'm guessing that you didn't think that you were going to, it wasn't even on your radar that you were going to be living in Spain, let alone running a tour company that's really focusing on women walking the Camino. So even though you felt this power of crossing the Pyrenees, you had no idea in 2003 how that was going to play out. So let's kind of talk about, like, when you look back at that, I mean, I've got chills right now just thinking about that. Like, how do you think this happened? And, you know, like, now you're living there. You really have changed your whole life based on the Camino.
Yeah, it wasn't something that became very obvious to me, even after I finished the Camino. It wasn't until many, many years later that I sort of thought back and thought, oh my goodness, now I can see why my life worked out the way it did. I can look back on my life and think, so that's why I did that. So subconsciously, that's why I did that. And it's really, really strange, because I recently wrote an article on Camino Magic, talking about this whole thing about Camino Magic, you know, and how do people feel it? What happens to people? You know, how does this Camino Magic work? And I had no idea I was going to walk the Camino, as you know.
Right.
It wasn't something I'd even thought about. I just thought it was great. I wanted to get fit, lose a bit of weight. You know, to me, that's what it was all about, you know, and I had no real idea what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm a military child, so I'm used to adapting to lots of different situations. I'm used to moving around, meeting new people. So I was not fazed by that at all. In fact, I loved it. I met so many amazing people and talked to everyone. They must have thought, oh God, go away, you know, but I just, I had amazing. Now, I think what happened when I left the Camino, and I'll skip right forward.
Okay.
Because I lost my sort of joy at the idea of becoming a lawyer completely. I suddenly realized that me behind a desk 16 hours a day in central London, just, it wasn't going to cut it for me. I just couldn't imagine not being free like I was on the Camino. On the Camino, I had no watch, I had no internet, I had a mobile phone, I had a disposable camera that gave me really shitty photos, I can tell you. You know, I had nothing apart from the odd internet cafe, which was really, really quite exciting. So I learned to live with what was in my rucksack, with very, very little else. And I loved it. I loved that simple way of life, that not having to make decisions, because I don't like making decisions very much.
Yeah.
And that just simple way of life. I knew it couldn't last forever, but I made it last forever. So when I came back, I finished my law degree and I graduated. And I went off and did a CELTA course, which is to qualify you to become an English teacher.
Oh, okay.
And I know for a fact the reason why I did that course is because I knew I could travel.
Wow.
And the only reason I did it. And I knew it when I did it, but it wasn't until years later that I look back and think, wow, that's what enabled you to do what you've done now. Mm-hmm. So I did this course and I went off to Poland and I taught in Poland for a year, which was incredible. The Polish people are just brilliant, had such a good time, stayed there for a year, and from there I went to Costa Rica. And I've always lived a very minimalistic life, and that comes from being on the Camino. I've always lived out of a suitcase. I've never really had very many possessions. Having a house now is like, whoa, you know, it's a huge thing for me. So I went to Costa Rica, stayed there for a year and a half, came back, and I've never really stayed in one place. I think I moved house with Simon 10 times in about 11 years. The poor man, he said to me, Carol doesn't clean, she just moves house. You know,
I love it.
Because I just can't settle. And when I finished the Camino, I actually did say one day I'm going to come and live here. And I didn't speak any Spanish at that time. Not a word, apart from café con leche and cerveza, of course, you know, the usual things. I didn't speak a word of Spanish. And eventually, somehow, I worked my way back from Costa Rica back to Spain, across, down to the south, stayed in the south, wasn't particularly happy there. I enjoyed it. It's lovely being in Spain, but it wasn't. And COVID happened. Now, I know it's been an awful time, and I know for a lot of people it's been terrible. It's been very, very tragic. But for me, it opened doors that I never thought would be possible. I had a really successful English academy down south, and I couldn't just walk away from it because it was my income. You know, that's what paid my bills. I couldn't just walk away from it, and I'd taken 11 years to build it. You know, it was my baby, and I was so proud of it. And then COVID happened, and oh my God, my life was just literally turned upside down. And so I took this week's intensive how to teach online course, which I'd never ever dreamt, because I am a complete technophobe. And
You're so good at stuff.
So I literally moved my school online, all of it within a week, had it online, and I said to Simon, right, we're selling up and we're moving north. And we did. And I sold the house when he was away on a course somewhere. He phoned up and I said, I've sold the house. He said, okay, yeah, no worries. And yeah, and then I came up and did another Camino to look around for houses up here. So my route back to the Camino was a long one that wasn't really obvious, whereas other people have gone, right, that's it, I've done the Camino, I'm moving to the Camino. It didn't happen like that with me. So yeah, it was I think when you process what the Camino has given you, it doesn't necessarily have to have happened, or you may not be aware of it immediately, but it is there, it's up here. And whether it's 2 years later, 5 years later, 20 years later, you know, it becomes obvious. Sorry, talking a lot.
No, I'm so glad you're bringing that up, Carol, because I think, you know, I've interviewed a lot of pilgrims who they, or maybe their friends that they made along the way, you know, get to Santiago, and there's kind of this this feeling of like, oh, what now? You know, and kind of I don't know, like an ambivalent feeling upon arrival. You know, you think it's going to be this very exciting moment, and sometimes that doesn't happen. And so I think sometimes in our Camino community, it's good to allow people to understand that everybody's going to have their own Camino. Yeah. And when you arrive in Santiago, someone told me, I think maybe a village or two out from Santiago, they said, I was so excited to get there, you know, and they said to me, you realize actually your Camino starts when you get to Santiago. And I could not at that moment understand at all what they meant, right? But here I am, you know, a couple of years out, haven't stepped foot in Spain in quite a while, and truly my Camino family continues to grow, my Camino experience continues to grow. And now I understand what that person was saying. So I think it's so great that you're bringing that up. And showing your story, which I think is a very exciting story. Now you said to me one day, I don't know if I really have something to talk about. And I think you have an amazing story. And I love how you've named your tour company Camino Confidence, because I think the confidence that you radiate is contagious. And so I want to talk about how you came up with the name, and talk a little bit about what you're doing to help women. I'm really impressed with what you've been putting out into the world already. And I want to make sure that people who haven't seen your stuff, if you know, we kind of just give them a little background on what you've been doing.
Well, I'm 56 years old, and I started, I'm going to go straight into it. I'm sorry. Okay. Any men watching, I'm really sorry. Started the menopause when I was in my 50s, in my early 50s. Now, Simon has a young daughter, and she's lovely. And I am ever the adventure person. I will do anything. I will try anything. Well, apart from heights, I'm not very good with heights. Okay. But I went into this, I don't know what you call it, is it like a ballpark like thing? She was 13 and she was just jumping all over the place. I went in with her and joined her, because of course that's what you do when you're 56 years old, about 50. Right. And I went onto this like shelf thing to jump off into some foam, and I couldn't do it. I just froze, and it really upset me. I know it sounds silly, it just really upset me. I couldn't jump, and then all of a sudden I started getting really, really anxious about social gatherings, and I would agree to do something, then I would find every reason to cancel and that kind of thing. And it was awful, from being a social person and being a very brave, I think I'm brave, I'll do a lot of things, to this woman who didn't have this confidence. This confidence was diminishing, and in front of my eyes, and I just thought, oh, I want to cry, actually. Sorry. Sorry. And it wasn't until a very long time later, or a few years later, that I spoke to somebody about the menopause, and she said, you really need to look at some information. So I looked on this page. I think it's Meg's Menopause, I think she's called. She used to go out with one of the famous, oh God, I'm terrible with names. Anyway, she started thinking, called Meg's Menopause, and I started reading it, and I thought, oh my God, that's me. Well, that's me. Well, that's me. I feel like that. And suddenly I started to realize, and of course, when you live in Spain, getting help with the menopause ain't going to happen.
Oh, really? Okay. I didn't
Yeah,
know.
well, it's very, very difficult, because a lot of things, I speak Spanish, but a lot is lost in translation. And so I just started to read a lot, and I started to realize that there must be other people out there like me. It wasn't just me that was feeling like this. It wasn't me. And a lot of that, then I started reading, a lot of women got even worse symptoms, and it's not just that. It's women of my sort of age. The children go off to university, and suddenly they've got this big empty house. They think, oh my goodness, what do I do with my time now?
Right.
They forget who they are. They lose touch with what they are and who they are. Nasty divorces, you know what it's like. I mean, I've been through one, you've been through one. It just knocks your... And I just thought to myself, right. And I was reading all these pages on Facebook because, well, you know how we've all become a little bit Facebook obsessed. And I did notice a lot of women saying, oh, I really want to do this, but I don't know what to do. I'm really nervous. And I thought, right, well, there's got to be something that we can do, because these women are slipping through the net. These women are giving up on dreams because they're too scared to do it.
Yeah.
And that's the whole reasoning behind Camino Confidence, is to offer a small, intimate, supportive group of women walking together, talking together, and just my way of introducing them to the Camino in a supportive environment, so that they can then come back and maybe do it themselves if that's what they want to do, or you know what I mean, have the confidence to do that. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, too well. Too well do I understand that. And I think that's why I so love the messages that you're putting out. And first off, thank you for the vulnerability and sharing your story, because I think so many times, I'm 56 too, and we women don't always share some of what happens to us at menopause. And lucky us, right at menopause is when a lot of these life transitions start really happening to us. We become empty nesters, or gray divorce, and da 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 da. Career changes, retirement.
Yeah.
It's a lot to handle, because you're also handling the physicality of menopause while also dealing with the transition. And so I think these women that you're talking about, which I was definitely one of those, is that it would be very easy to get discouraged and not go, because I think that, when you pick up the memoirs and the different things, or you look at the forums about the Camino, it makes it sound like there's only one type of Camino. And if you don't start in Saint Jean and carry your backpack with that 30 pounds and, so on, then you're not a real pilgrim. And I think, there's a lot of women that have never traveled on their own. Yeah. And it's a big deal sometimes. It feels like a big deal to, go to a country you've never been to and walk across it. And you felt that back in 2003, like, well, what, we're going to walk across Spain? So I think giving those women that support, and I love that's what, part of your story is that the confidence that you also grew, like the fact that you still, receive inspiration by what you did, but going across the Pyrenees, that's what's going to happen to the women that go with you. right? Because they're gonna, like, I did this, I traveled by myself, I walked 110 kilometers into Santiago, and now look what I can do as a result.
I just honestly, I honestly think that the Camino could be the answer to a lot of people's problems, problems with self-confidence. I am so passionate about choice. I am so passionate about choice. There is choice. We're in modern day world now, you know, and there isn't just one Camino. And as we move forward, there's going to be lots and lots of different types of Camino, you know, and I think it has to be the Camino that suits the person. Now, for example, my idea is, you know, no, I'm not going to set them off on a 30-mile hike, you know, with a massive 7 kilo rucksack on their back. I mean, that could knock their confidence completely, in my humble opinion. I can't do it. I'm rubbish. You know, it all comes flooding back. So, you know, it's a softly approach where women get to be introduced softly to the Camino, to how to deal with the everyday issues, to how to deal with maybe a language barrier that a lot of people will suffer with. What's a normal day like on a Camino? You know, to sort of allay all their worries, so that just like an introduction, so that they can then come. You know what I mean? It's not everybody can just put a rucksack on their back, land in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, and walk across to Santiago. Not everyone's made the same, and thank goodness, because this world would be a really boring place if we were the same, wouldn't it, really?
It really would. And I love how you're introducing this as kind of a Camino taster.
Yeah.
It's a good term, because I think it's like, you know, and maybe describe to everyone, because if they haven't had a chance to see your Facebook or your Instagram account yet, which don't worry, everyone, I'll have links to Carol's information so you can check out what she's doing. But can you just kind of describe for our viewers and listeners what a Camino taster would entail?
So what I actually do is I choose a part of the Camino, and it could be a week, it might be 2 weeks, or it could be the Portuguese Camino, it could be you know, the Française, that sort of thing. And I source properties. Now, I know that when women get to a certain age, well, not all, so I can't generalize, but I have experienced this. Maybe saying, you know, Outberg is obviously the way forward for a lot of people, but for some people, just the thought of sharing a room with somebody, and you know, they want their privacy, they're really worried about that. It's scary in itself. So what I try to do is I keep very, very small groups. I organize the accommodation, so as much as possible, single rooms with ensuite. If not possible, maybe we'll share a house, and that kind of thing. But to keep this small bubble together, so we can support each other. And I, obviously, before we even start, I will have a chat with them all, a Zoom meeting, a bit much like this, to give them an introduction to the Camino, tell them what's going to happen, what to expect, because some people don't like the unexpected. Some people like to know what's going to happen, a bit like me with this interview. And I kept pestering you and saying, what questions are you going to ask? You know, it's and you wouldn't tell me. A bit like that, you know, and I just, some people can deal, they love the surprises. I like surprises, you know, they love to face challenges. Other people are not quite ready for that. So I talk to them about the possible challenges. I talk to them about what's going to happen. I've even got a friend, a really good friend called Robin, who is a mindset coach called the Perpetual Pilgrim, who is going to be working alongside me as well, quite a lot on a lot of these things.
I think she's going to be on the Camino Cafe soon. So.
Oh, great!
Yeah, so people will get to meet her.
Yeah, she's fabulous. She's really, really great. And I just want them to have a nice time. I just want them to go away with a smile on their face. I want them to go away and think, you know what? I did it. I did it. Look what I did. And I did it all by myself. Well, mostly, apart from me talking their heads off in the background, of course. I did it by myself. And that's what I want. I want these people, I mean, it could be a hand-holding thing. So like they do a week with me and then they walk the rest of it by themselves. or
Mhm.
they do a week with me, then they come back and, I don't know. But that's what I want. So that's what I'm offering is sort of like, I'm going to be guiding them.
Okay.
I'll be with them all the way, supporting them all the way, spending the evenings with them, but giving them that flexibility to enjoy it. What I don't want is them, you will be here by this time, you will have your lunch, you will have your dinner. It's not going to be like that.
Okay, great.
It's going to be a case of, hey guys, who's hungry? Or look, someone can say to me, Carol, I really, really need to walk by myself for a couple of hours. Fine, just make sure they know where they're going. And do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
A little bit more flexibility, I think.
It
Sorry,
sounds
have I answered the question? Because I feel like I'm just blur and there's no logic.
Oh, no, it was brilliant. I want to circle back on a couple of things. I think, first off, the ripple effect that could have happened from what you're offering with this taster, right? Like you're saying, they may continue to walk. If you're picking a segment that, is several kilometers before Santiago. So that's really exciting because that would just kind of give them that confidence boost on what the following days are going to be like. So that's wonderful.
Yeah.
If that is their journey and that starts and ends with you, the ripple effect, much like what's happened with your life, who knows what's going to happen as a result of this, right? Like 10 years from now, they might be living in Spain, or they might go back and start a business wherever they lived back, in the UK or in the US or wherever. So I think it's really exciting. It's going to be fun for you, I think, to watch the progression of these women that go with you, and see what happens in their lives. So yeah, I think that's really exciting. And it sounds like then you're doing a lot of research for them, that they're going to, I think sometimes, we can look at this and say, well, do people really want to go with the group? But what I love about this concept is that they get to start a Camino family immediately.
Yeah.
And they will also build other Camino family members, because there'll be times they're walking on their own, or you're going to have dinner out and they're going to meet other pilgrims. So it's really a nice way to, from the get-go, have a group and to feel that Camino love that I think we all love so much. Now you have, I thought one that was already filled, but another one coming up. I think I saw a post about maybe 5 openings up for one that's coming soon.
Yeah, I'm sort of planning my future walks around my partner's business as well, because he's a diving instructor and he travels a lot with his work, and we also want to see each other occasionally. So, but no, I'm organising the Sarria to Santiago, and my reason for organising the Sarria to Santiago is because I want them to know what it feels like walking into Santiago. And I want to give them that feeling of walking into Santiago. It's later on in the year because of obviously COVID. We just don't know where we are with it. And I'm trying to get that organized. But what I'm planning to do possibly next Easter, next Semana Santa or Easter, is to start one in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. And do that for either a week,
Okay,
or 2 weeks into Logroño, depending on what people want. So that, like exactly as you said, so that I can say to those people, all right, this is what we're going to do, right? How much time have you got blocked out? You can continue when you finish with me. Maybe they can continue a bit further on. I'm also going to possibly do a Portuguese one. Great. Next year. I'm sorry, I've completely lost track of what you asked me. I think it was what I was doing. I haven't really sort of tied everything up yet. I think with COVID, it's so difficult to really get everything off the ground. But I've had a lot of interest in the Sarria to Santiago one, so I'm really, really pleased about that.
Yeah, definitely seeing interest from people and what you're posting. So that's fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, because anytime I speak to someone that's actually living in Spain, I want to make sure that, we touch upon the situation that's going on. And I think that, you mentioned earlier, I mean, there have been some really tragic situations, and there have been some very sad things and a lot of loss in Spain, as well as all over the world. So, so first, I just want to say, recognize that as we continue this talk. We have a lot of people, a lot of acquaintances that are getting ready to had already. So I know that you've reached you've been out on the way path in numerous places. So I wonder if you could just give listeners and viewers an update on, what's your take? How do you think things are in Spain right now?
Well, we did get news that the figures were going down. The COVID cases were reducing. But unfortunately, due to the end of school, a lot of teenagers went to Mallorca or other places and didn't follow the restrictions, paid complete disregard to the restrictions. And unfortunately, now that Mallorca has had another spike and they've got several hundred more cases of COVID, which is terrible for a small island.
Yes.
It's terrible for anywhere, but for a small island, it's really, really bad. And then, of course, they all came back to Spain. So I have heard, I don't listen to the news very much, to be honest with you, Lee, because it's just too depressing. But I have heard that there has been a spike in cases.
Okay.
Which has come at a really bad time, because we have just received news that it's no longer obligatory to wear our face masks when we're outside, unless we can't social distance. So we still have to wear them. If I'm walking out, where I do outside my house here in the country, it doesn't matter. But I have noticed that most people are keeping them on.
Yeah.
And anyone I speak to, a lot of kids saying, my students, Carol, I don't want to take my mask off. I just want to leave it on for now. I just think it's dangerous to take my mask off. And but we are leading a normal life over here, as normal as possibly can be. Most things are open. I go to my local village. I can sit down and have a cup of coffee. I've just got to be aware. I can drink coffee, but I've got to put my mask back on afterwards. I can go to the hairdressers, but there's lots more. They spray you. They clean the chairs. Much more attention is paid to cleanliness, and this is the same in the outbergs as well.
How were things in Leon? Were most of the cafes open? What was your feel? Did you feel like the vibe of the city, the old town, was there?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. It was still there. It's still here. I don't know how it's happening, but I don't know what's happening exactly, how it's happening, because I feel that we have a very normal life here. I don't feel, when it first started and they put us into lockdown, I was terrified, literally terrified. I didn't even want to go to the supermarket. I just said, Si, you go to the supermarket. I don't want to go. I was terrified. Now, I just have to think about cleanliness, washing my hands, wearing my mask, when I go social distancing and things. That's all. It's relatively back to normal now.
Okay, great. So if somebody is planning right now to walk in the next month or so, are there any, carrying a mask, making sure you have multiple masks? Is there anything else that you would recommend to them? Are you finding, I know there are still many restrictions for some of our albergue owners who have not been able to reopen. So, are you recommending that people make reservations ahead? What's different compared to, say, 2 years ago, if you and I had been chatting and somebody was getting ready to go? Is there something else that you would say, hey, make sure you're doing this?
I know that part of the beauty of the Camino is to not worry about certain things, just to day by day, just live day by day. And I know that's the beauty of the Camino, and that's what I enjoyed when I first did it. But things have changed, and we have to learn to live with the changes. Now, first of all, the legislation is different in Castilla y León to what it is in Galicia, for example.
Yes.
In Galicia at the moment, they can welcome bubbles, Camino bubbles, like families, into their accommodations. Well, in Castilla y León, that's not possible. I don't know about...
Can you explain that a little bit more for people?
So basically, if you're working, that's the last I heard. This could have changed since then.
Sure. Yeah, everybody keep that in mind. That we're first day of July here, so keep in mind if you're listening.
Yeah. Please bear in mind that this could change. If, for example, by the time they get to Galicia, most people have got their what we call Camino families.
Yes.
And for those of you who don't know, a Camino family, those people that you meet along the way and you walk with. You might not walk with them every day, but you walk with them here. Now, these Camino families are now considered to be bubbles.
Ah, okay.
So if you are in a Camino bubble, apparently you can stay in an albergue in Galicia. I could be wrong. I'm really sorry if I am, Lee.
Okay.
You know,
Sorry. Yeah.
but in Castilian, that's not the case. So you have a small albergue, okay, that are told, right, you can only have a certain percentage of people in your albergue. So it might be just one person, or 4 people in the same family. How often do you get 4 people walking in the same family? It's a very unusual situation. I mean, it'd be lovely, but so it's just not worth them opening. You know, it's just not worth opening. So what I will say is this: yeah, guidebooks are great, internet's great, and I'll tell you something. There's people working behind the scenes here on the Camino, working really, really hard to get up-to-date lists of which accommodations are open, which ones are not. But it changes every day.
Right.
You know, so no, you can't be quite you can't wing it as easy as you did, in my honest opinion. I think you do need to at least book a few days ahead, because not just for your peace of mind that you're going to have somewhere to sleep, but also for the albergues, because the albergues now have got a lot more cleaning to do.
Right.
You know, they've got a lot more preparing to do. I'm not saying they didn't clean in the old days.
Right.
They did clean, obviously, but now it's to the point of, you know, they've just got so much cleaning to do and so much extra work to do that, yeah, I think it's better to try and book if you can in advance.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I think also a way of supporting everyone along the Camino, you know, the owners, because, you know, we don't want people overbuying food and, you know, things going to waste because they can't, you know, because they're not aware of how many people might be spending the night.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
Right. So I think anything that we can do to kind of give that heads up so they can be prepared. And of course, you know, not wasting energy in certain ways for them, because it's been a tough year and a half. And we want to make sure that as pilgrims that we're trying to give back to those people that have been so deeply impacted financially and, you know, really emotionally with the Camino being shut down for as long as it was. Yeah, well, thank you for that report, because I think it's always good to kind of hear what's going on the ground. And, you know, I just encourage everyone to follow your pages, because, you know, you are out and about and walking a lot. And so it's a great way. I love it. I love seeing you out there, because it gives me a taste of it, and kind of shows all of us that are hoping to get there sometime soon, you know, what's going on. So thank you for that. Wow, well, we have talked, I think, quite a while, so we probably are going to have to wrap up. But I am so grateful for you coming on today. And I just wonder if you might just say, you know, if there's somebody sitting out there right now who's on the fence and they're trying to decide, you know, should I even do this Camino, or should I go, you know, this fall if, you know, everything's going okay with COVID? What would you say to kind of nudge them off that fence to encourage them to do this Camino?
Oh, wow. Gosh, let me think. I think, see, the devil in me just says go for it. Honestly, seriously. And that's what I would do. I mean, obviously, you've got to consider the health of people, and you can come here and do the Camino and still be considerate and sensible, you know. And like someone said to me a long time ago, and I thought this was quite true. I don't understand why people can't come on the Camino, because let's face it, the Camino is probably one of the safest places you can be at the moment. And I completely agree with that, because you're out in the open air. You know, what harm can you come to? You're out in the open air. You're not causing any trouble. I just think, just do it. And if you can't talk, I don't know, I can't really explain myself very well, because I don't want it to come as flippant to people who are really, really scared. Do you know what I mean? Because there are a lot of people who are scared. If you feel really, really worried, then perhaps leave it until things are a little bit more settled. But I don't know. I'd go, personally, I'd just go for it.
Well, I think you've shown a great example of how that's paid off in your own life. You know, I think hopefully, I know I'm gaining a little surge of confidence and courage by hearing your own story. So I'm sure others are as well. So Camino Confidence, make sure if you've been listening or watching to check it out, and you can see Carol's adventures. And if you're on the fence, and remember, she's there as a resource. She's really great about answering questions. I see a lot of people. She's on several of the pages we all follow on Facebook and whatnot. And so I'm sure that she's open to answering any questions that you might have about it. And
Absolutely, yeah.
So thank you so much for coming to the Camino Cafe. This is what it's all about, right? It's just sitting at that pilgrim's table, having a little talk at the cafe. And I feel like I just had a great boost of that Camino magic of when we get to meet people along the way. So thank you for this today.
You're welcome. It's been absolutely lovely. I've had so much fun. I have no idea if I've answered all your questions, because I tend to sort of
Oh, I think you absolutely.
I've really enjoyed it.
All right. Well, I'm going to close. Please stay on, Carol, so you and I can say goodbye. But I just want to say so long to everyone. To remember that our opening song, if you're listening on the podcast, is by Jackson Maloney, and he just had a brand new release. So please be sure to check out Jackson Maloney Music so you can hear his new album. And anyway, we'll be back with more shows of pilgrims, and I hope you're enjoying what we're doing. And if you are, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe, comment. We pilgrims, we really love to hear from people. So if you make a comment on our posts, we will respond, because we like to talk about the Camino. So please, please, please connect with us. So thank you everyone for being here. Until next time, Buen Camino.